Hello! Welcome to another video I didn't plan on making. So many thoughts on this one, I don't know where to start. The news! I'll start with the news. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so the news is Ubisoft is shutting down the online components to another round of games and the DLC for them. See? Steam says the game won't be playable. What a deal! What a great deal! Or maybe not. Now Ubisoft is saying Steam is lying, the games will remain playable, they're just being delisted, I think? But let us not forget, Ubisoft is composed of known liars. Remember that time when they said a subscription game wasn't a subscription game? Or in 2014, they said the game Watch Dogs did not have a visual downgrade from its E3 demonstration? An official PR representative said, believe me, the game is not downgraded. Then in 2016, the developer talked about how it was downgraded. Now personally, I think that game still looks pretty great even for a downgrade. So that scandal is water under the bridge for me. Except for the part that we have documented proof that they lied to the public. I think that part is worth remembering. So these games are being destroyed or partially destroyed or delisted? You know what? I don't know, and Ubisoft lies, so we'll just have to find out. Now, if I were to guess, let's say 10 years from now, I think the multiplayer components to all these games are dead. You can still play all of them with DLC and single-player mode only via piracy, and Space Junkies is 100% dead. So Space Junkies is almost certainly going to be a dead game. But the rest of these aren't fully dead, just dead multiplayer. Unless somebody hacks together an alternate network, which, I wouldn't give that great odds. And that about does it for the news portion of the show. Now on to the Unsolved Mysteries segment. Okay, as I say this, I have received more emails and notices about this dead game news than any other. And just by totally unscientific and anecdotal evidence, I want to say this might be some of the most widely covered news about games shutting down that I've ever seen by the games media. Asheron's Call got a chunk of attention, but I want to say this is seeing even more. So the question is, why? I mean, this is hardly the first round of Ubisoft shutdowns we've seen. What about the ones for Assassin's Creed 2, Far Cry 2, Far Cry Blood Dragon? I've literally already done 2 Dead Game News episodes on separate Ubisoft shutdowns. Look at these shutdowns of 2017. I didn't even cover these. Plus, why is Ubisoft getting more attention for shutdowns than Electronic Arts? Sweet Christ, they've had to break it up alphabetically, there have been so many. So this is nothing new at all. There is nothing unique about these shutdowns. Past ones straight up killed more games than this. Almost all of them lost multiplayer or DLC. So why is this getting so much attention now? Honestly, I wasn't even going to cover this because this was just another shutdown. But I've seen so much feedback on this, I felt compelled to. I mean, this is why I stopped covering most shutdowns on Dead Game News. I couldn't keep up. It was overwhelming. Especially if you're talking multiplayer death. I tend to focus on complete game death, because then it's a black and white issue. The buyer bought a game with a perpetual license, and they're left with nothing. So it's not perpetual, it's fraud. But the courts have not examined this, so we keep getting games destroyed. So what's changed since I started making the first Dead Game News episode? See, I would have said not much, but apparently something has, because this is an event that would have been largely ignored earlier. But now it's making game news rounds in a big way. Well, I don't know why, but I have a few theories. Feel free to weigh in. The first is simple. Population and games are bigger, so any game news gets more coverage. I'm not sure it's changed so dramatically in the past few years, but I guess it's possible. The second is maybe I've helped plant this idea more. I made my Games as a Service video 3 years ago, and it's one of the most watched videos I've ever made to my surprise. I was hoping somebody else with more time would take up the mantle after that, but I haven't really noticed it. I don't care if it's coming from me, but I'm hoping this idea is permeating the consciousness. You know how in It's a Wonderful Life, the protagonist sees how different life would be without him? I can completely believe there would be no obvious differences if that was me. I could never have existed, and this news might still be coming to a boil. I mean, I obviously haven't been successful so far. They're still killing games. And my final theory, which I think is the most likely, is game journalism reasons. But this opens up even more mystery. Okay, this is a very nebulous thing, but there are conscious decisions made about what's covered in journalism and what's not. Some of it is about maximizing views, some of it is company culture, sometimes it's what the ownership wants or who is funding the ownership, and so on. I have almost no connections to establishment games journalism. I don't know how they think, but I will say, in my opinion, games media tends to give extremely softball coverage on game shutdowns. I literally can't remember seeing an article that talks about how this is preventable, questions the legality of the action, or God forbid, does research as a journalist on organizations that can help prevent this and redirect their readers to that. At most, I usually just see a sad acceptance, like no other outcome is possible. This makes me think this is either intentional, because the publication can't rock the boat too much or risk losing relations with game companies, or there's such rampant groupthink that the thought has literally never occurred to them. I don't know. When I made my games as a service video, one developer reached out to me and said he had literally never heard that argument before. That destroying a game people paid for is an unacceptable practice? That's depressing. I mean, Jesus Christ, a game developer not being aware that a game, any game, does not have to be designed to die is like,
Hey, what you doing on your computer?
What's a computer?
Yeah, like that. I think my brain has to be wired differently than most game journalists, though. Because to me, it's a shock every time I see a game shut down. My emotional reaction is exactly the same as if I saw someone head into an art museum and start setting fire to the paintings. There's just no difference at all. That's certainly not how they write these articles. Now, you could argue they're trying to be objective, but the very nature of the problem seems like it would be an existential threat to their career? Except I guess it's not, because there are always new games to write about. So I guess they're comfortable existing in a mind space where media is disposable and gets destroyed sometime after you experience it? I mean, that's still not objective. That's a very anti-history stance. And it just kind of feels like the path to madness myself, but, okay, I would move on, but no, they won't let me. In the midst of this shutdown, Anno 2070 is having its online features shut down also, but a Ubisoft sub-company is trying to fight to maintain them, or else fight itself, I'm not sure. Now this is a fantastic headline, but here is also a perfect example of what I mean regarding the mentality being taken here. Look at this sentence. Anno 2070 has been out for more than a decade now, and some might say that's enough time for fans to get their fill. Seriously? This is what PC Gamer, the self-proclaimed global authority on PC games, is writing on a partial game shutdown? This framing is trash. I honestly can't remember if I addressed this in a previous video or not. I remember thinking this is such a juvenile way of thinking it wasn't worth addressing. I mean, do you guys see what he's trying to do here? He's not keeping focus on the enemy. The company removing features from the game that you paid for, which again, I would like to emphasize that practice has not been examined by the courts. Instead, this sentence is trying to start a divide and conquer tactic. Some say this is reasonable, some don't. Who knows? This is how you undermine morale and try to ensure nothing helpful ever gets done. Now, I don't know if he's aware this is what he's doing and if this is on purpose, but that is what's happening here. I mean, that's the part to remember, that this is subtle manipulation, whether it's conscious or not. But since he opened that door, I'll try to shut it as fast as I can. I've seen this argument before. It's juvenile, not really worth addressing, but since the global authority deems it fit to print, let's go through it super quick. You can timestamp this if you ever see this argument in the future. People had their chance to play the game. Okay, let's look at the obvious. What if they want to keep playing? I've seen frightening videos of what people are still doing with Mario 64. Also, this argument assumes everyone got a chance to play the game. Maybe they hadn't gotten around to it yet. Have you ever heard of a game backlog? What if they just discovered the game last week and now it's shutting down? What about every single person in the future who wants to play the game? Hey, you know Dracula was published in 1897? What if we had burned every single copy of the book in 1907? Because, everybody had their chance to read it. That's literally the logic of this argument. But hey, let's frame our news coverage as though this is a legitimate view. Some people say we should burn everything. Others say history should be allowed to exist. We're just reporting the news. We're not trying to poison the discussion on a business practice that would have been declared illegal years ago in a sane world. Yeah, that's it for the argument. Thanks for pissing me off, PC Gamer. Are they trying to on purpose? I don't know. I don't know anything now when it comes to how journalism works. I read an article recently by a non-gaming journalist that detailed how the CIA is embedded in just about every mainstream news outlet all over the world, and at least a third of their funding has been devoted to propaganda. They've influenced hiring practices, directly paid journalists, all manner of things. And it wasn't just for spin. They also straight up fabricated stories before with faked photographs and no actual evidence, making national news as fact that didn't come to light until a decade later. Now, I don't think the CIA is involved in gaming journalism. At least, probably not much. But the point is, I can't tell who has an agenda, who's organically pushing unhelpful framing, and now I can't tell why this Ubisoft shutdown is getting so much more attention than the others. I mean, I guess I don't need to. Any exposure on this issue is helpful, but what's going on? I don't know, you tell me. So that's the mystery, and I don't get it, but since you summoned me here, I may as well give you more to chew on. I thought I'd explain quick why all these multiplayer shutdowns are not a surprise to me. What maybe some gamers don't realize is that this is almost every online multiplayer game now. Here's a chart I made to show what to expect as to whether an online multiplayer game will survive or not. As you can see, it's pretty bad. The odds have always been against you on consoles. 20 years ago, things were a lot better on this front on the PC, and now it depends on basically sheer luck as to whether a multiplayer game survives. Most do not. And yes, we have been marching into a collective madness by designing pretty much every modern multiplayer game to die without divine intervention. We used to not do that. There are lots of online multiplayer games from 20-ish years ago you can still play online even if the company doesn't exist anymore. This isn't lost arcane knowledge. It's like that bicycle meme. This is modern multiplayer design. This is it exactly. Okay, I'm feeling crazy again. I should probably end this soon. But since this Ubisoft shutdown is apparently a landmark event, let's set some other landmarks quick. The first has long been a pet peeve of mine, but I'm starting to understand it's different than what I thought it was. When reading about this news, I saw a lot of comments saying, this is why I buy physical, not digital. Now, I've tried to explain in the past that physical copies of games versus digital ones are an utterly irrelevant metric in the modern age, and all that matters is DRM. Yeah, having physical copies is really going to protect these games, right? This is where the industry is trying to take us. I don't like it either. So that's the first reason this bugs me. It's just a faulty argument. The second reason is this was never actually true at all for PC games. I don't think it was the first, but Half-Life 2 was certainly one of the first games to offer both a physical and a digital copy for sale. So you had a choice. Well, if you took the old wisdom of buy physical, not digital, then you had a coaster. Unless you connected to the internet and downloaded Steam and created an account for your single-player physical copy of the game. Physical games only ever added a layer of protection for console games, but again, that's heavily eroded now. So this saying used to bug me because it's wrong, but it suddenly hit me what's happening here. Gaming has been around long enough that these are the boomers of gaming. It doesn't matter that game preservation is turning into a complicated hellscape. They know what used to work for them, so they keep repeating that phrase. People telling you to buy physical to protect your games are the equivalent of your grandpa telling you to get a summer job to pay off college. Oh, yeah, that should do it. Why didn't you think of that earlier? Yeah, thanks, Grandpa. I mean, I'm not trying to knock physical copies if you like the aesthetics. Hell yeah, look at that one. But just a game being a physical copy is a meaningless metric for preserving your game. Hey, I read the physical collector's edition of the new God of War game will not contain any disc of the game. What more can I say? And speaking of protecting games, the other landmark is this shutdown certainly puts piracy in an interesting light. The message Ubisoft is sending to its customers is you should probably pirate their games if you want to keep them. If you played by the rules and bought DLC for these games, then you lost it. Or maybe not. We don't know. Or maybe they'll let you keep it now, then try to take it away again a year from now? Who knows? Now, I don't want to make a blanket statement on piracy as a whole, since that entails so many different things. It's too nuanced an issue. But this is what I mean about game preservation. There are no rules. It's a minefield. And there's a lot of games you literally can't play or lose features from if you obey the rules. But pirates, don't be like the buy physical people. Don't be that guy saying, this is why I pirate games, and pretend like that's a comprehensive solution. While piracy is becoming more and more mandatory to just play games, especially older ones, it only protects some games. Piracy is not going to save Space Junkies. They are going to keelhaul that one. Piracy is not a solution for a lot of newer games, and that's the direction the industry is eager to head in, especially Ubisoft. It's getting ugly. But yeah, we've entered an age where game preservation is rapidly becoming the realm of technical outlaws. So, interesting times ahead.